been a good one. Rich Williams here, looking after things for Richard Stead, and lots heading your way. Some brilliant music, as always. All the news will keep you up to date with the roads. It's a busy one out there at the moment, whilst the sun's shining, and lots more heading your way as well. OK, on to a more serious topic. When I read this, because I get sent these sort of intros to the thing that we're talking about, and when I read this out, it really kind of like shocked me. Around 70 children under 18 die suddenly and unexpectedly in West Yorkshire each year. I just heard that, I was like, wow, that, you know, kind of like took me aback. Now, the shocking fact is that the families of these children often do not receive any professional support in the immediate aftermath. So the Forget Me Not Children's Hospice has partnered with West Yorkshire Police to ensure more families receive this vital support. And I'm joined by Nikki Speed, who set up the SUDC, that's the Sudden Unexplained Death in Childhood UK charity, after the sad passing of her daughter, Rosie. And Luen Thompson, the Chief Executive of the Forget Me Not charity. Welcome both of you to BBC Radio Leeds. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Nikki, let's just start with you. Can you talk us through a little bit about your situation, which I know is coming up to 10 years now, and what happened with you and your daughter, Rosie, and what you went through, and the lack of support, I guess, that has made you set up this charity?
Absolutely. Thanks so much. I think you're completely right. It's shocking to think how many children are dying suddenly every year. It's something that's not really talked about very much. We talk, as we should do, about baby loss, but we don't really talk about older children that are dying suddenly. Rosie was 2 1/4. She was scooting around the zoo, completely fine. And very sadly, I put her to bed just before Christmas in 2013 and went in the morning, as every mum or dad does, to wake her up, and she was lying face down in her bed. So it was a whirlwind of obviously tragic grief, and we were also really confused and felt like we were the only people in the entire world this had ever happened to, because we never knew that this could happen to children. And we didn't really have the local kind of services reach out to us following Rosie's death. And very sadly, we happened upon a counsellor through a friend, and it was more of a stumbling across support and having to do things ourselves to find people to help us. And that's why this talking about Forget Me Not Hospice today is so important, because families, we know that families need local tailored support when they suffer the very tragic loss of their child. I speak to people across the country as CEO of SUDC-UK, and the support does vary. So it's a privilege to be here with Luen today and talk about her fantastic service.
Thank you for explaining the circumstances. I mean, coming up to 10 years, I guess, this December, I presumably doesn't get much easier in any way, shape or form. And I would have thought, to be in that situation, the thing you really need in terms of support is to be swept up by a support system in the moment of grief, where your thinking maybe isn't necessarily in as straight a line as it might be normally, that actually those services are there, but in fact found yourself in a kind of whirlwind of no support.
Exactly. And you're absolutely right. You need to be embraced. You can't even remember to eat. You are absolutely in shock having lost your child. And the partnership between the police and the hospice means that people get that immediate local support. They can sit and have somebody talk to them about what to expect, what will happen, support them with practical things. From a national perspective, we provide that community at SUDC UK of families that really understand exactly what they're going through. And through our charity, they get to look other parents with exactly the same situation in the eye at family events and speak to me kind of straight away, mum to mum, and feel like they're not the only people in the world this has happened to. But the local support, I cannot stress how essential it is to have those layers of, just as you've said, embracing support. You need to be scooped up.
Yeah. Let's just bring in you, Luen, the Chief Executive for the Forget Me Not charity, which just does fantastic work, and I've been aware of for a long time the work that you guys do. Just explain how you come in here and the kind of partnership and the work that you're going to be doing to help effectively solve what is a bit of a gap here that hasn't been there to support people.
Yeah, I think it's the reason our partnership with the police is so important is because whenever there is an unexpected death of a child, the police are always involved. And for the families, that adds a layer of trauma because they don't necessarily expect that. And the police are looking through a different lens around this, as you would expect them to do, because they need to understand whether a crime has been committed or not. Whereas our lens is very much about supporting the family at the time when they need care and compassion, and then thinking about what does it mean to be a brother or a sister in that family, what does it mean to be a grandparent in that family, where sometimes there's the double loss of your grandchild, but also how you support your child who's lost their child. So there's layers and layers and layers of things there which can be unpicked and supported from a very practical point of view around appointing a funeral director and doing some memory making, to much longer term things around recognising that people's grief manifests itself in lots of different ways and at different times, and that people need things in different ways. So a lot of our support is around bereavement and counselling, and can be quite specialist support for those families who are affected by post-traumatic stress disorder, which is not an uncommon event for somebody who's lost their child.
And it might be worth me just mentioning at the moment, because we've used a couple of different terms here that sound very similar, but unexpected death and unexplained death, the difference between those two, because it's probably just worth highlighting that at the moment. It wasn't something I'd really thought about until obviously I'd read some information about this, and then thought, oh right, there is a difference, still terribly tragic circumstances, but a difference in the terminology between the two things.
Shall I talk about that, Nikki?
Yeah, go ahead.
So at Forget-Me-Not, we refer to sudden unexpected deaths. So that could include where a child has been murdered, a suicide, a road traffic accident, an illness. And usually when a child dies unexpectedly, there is a cause, and you get to a point where you understand the cause. But for some families, and this is the difference, and the bit about an unexplained death, is that there is no cause that ever comes out of any kind of process. And so families find it really difficult to get any kind of closure on what has happened to their child and why it's happened, and of course whether that's likely to happen again. And I think for those families that is incredibly scary, especially where they maybe go on to have more children, or they've got siblings in the family as well, because you're just dealing with the unknown. And for most people, that is really difficult. I know Nikki will have a perspective on that.
Yeah, thanks, Luen. It is, you go through the whole process of the investigation, the post-mortem, then to still not have anybody, no doctor can sit down and tell you why your child has died. As Luen said, it's really hard to understand, but it's also, you're paralyzed with fear for your other children. So that's why it's important you have local support after any sudden death. But if there's no explanation, it's really important that they can speak to experts at SUDC-UK about further tests, genetic testing, cardiac screening, things that are very unique to that specific type of death. And I know that Luen will also refer to other charities if there are different explanations to why children are dying suddenly.
I went on the website and had a look. You've got a video on the website, which is families and parents who've been bereaved with this situation, which was a video that I would describe as heartbreaking and inspirational in equal measures, insofar as it's a really tough watch to hear people talking about go through what you've been through, but incredibly inspiring to hear them talk. Also about trying to make things better for other families and what have you. I guess it's a community of people that you would never necessarily choose to be part of, but actually is a really strong community of people who've been through this kind of thing, Nikki, who are working together to try and make it. I don't know whether better's the right word. I'm trying to choose my words right here. You know what I mean, Nikki? But better, that God forbid you should be in that situation, that there are people there to support you. If I'm not mumbling my words too much here,
no,
Nikki.
you're so correct. It's such a positive thing to come together as a group of families. So, for example, I climbed Snowdon last year with 11 other mums. Tomorrow, there's a family day, an SUDC-UK family day taking place. And because we don't know what happened to our children, leaving a legacy behind for them and helping enable research and raise awareness. This does happen. If we talk about it, then actually we can probably stop it happening if we can fund research. We've seen that happen for babies. Deaths have dropped by 80% for unexplained deaths in babies. There has not been the research into older children. So that's another thing that the charity tries to do, is to give that positive experience to a family where they can come together and do something as a legacy.
Yeah, so I just lost you there. I think you were saying do something as a legacy. Well, am I right in thinking that there was a sort of an event to launch this yesterday? How did that go?
Yes, we held an event at the Hospice yesterday, which Nikki very kindly came and spoke at alongside Mark Boat from West Yorkshire Police. We had a number of people attend, coroners, staff who work in A&E departments. We had funeral directors, we had somebody from the Muslim Burial Council. So there's a whole variety of people who came together to collaborate, to think about how can we improve these services for children? How can we ensure that every child that this happens to in West Yorkshire, for their family, they know how to access the service and can benefit from everything that we have to offer. And what can we do going forward to make sure that the services are appropriately funded so that there's no risk that the service will disappear either?
Well, thank you both for joining us here on BBC Radio Leeds. Nikki, I assume it's not easy conversation to have, but by able to do something positive, I'm guessing that maybe helps the process potentially?
Absolutely, it does. And that video you mentioned is on our website, sudc.org.uk. So if people want to have a look at that video, and we work very closely with Luen, and hopefully families will receive better care moving forwards if more people know about it.
Absolutely. I'm just going to warn people they might need to take a moment if they look at that video. I had a little moment earlier on today. Thank you both for joining us. Really appreciate that. Enjoy your weekend, enjoy the sunshine, and well done on putting together such a fantastic partnership, which is going to have immeasurable help in helping people who find themselves in that situation. Thanks for joining us here on BBC Radio Leeds.
Thank you, Rick.
So there you go. Nikki Speed there, and Luen Thompson, who is the Chief Executive of the Forget Me Not charity, and Nikki Speed, who set up SUDC, if you want to go and have a look at that website, SUDC-UK charity, after the sad passing of her daughter, Rosie. Okay, BBC Radio Leeds. Thanks for joining us. It is 2:52 now.